Hey, this is Alan with Whitetail Inspirations, and I got a story for you today. A couple weeks ago, I tagged a pretty nice buck. He was a heavy 13 point. It's about 16 inches wide. It was a great deer, a beautiful deer actually, and it really was a blessing that I got him. Especially the way everything happened, the way everything lined out to previous to actually shooting him. It was quite a miracle that I actually pulled it off. But so what happened is it's about 11:30. I had already gotten down out of my stand, and I was walking, and I was coming over the top of a hill, and still I'd just gotten down. I looked behind me, I could see the stand. It wasn't too far out there, and coming over this hill, meeting me was this deer, and I didn't see him. I'd almost just gotten right past him. He was passing me, I was passing him, and I saw something brown out of the corner of my eye. And I looked, and all I saw was the left side of his main beam and those points sticking up. I'm like, oh my goodness! So I turn around, and I pull up, and I shoot. All right, this deer maybe, I don't know, 15 yards away at the most, about 15 yards away when I shoot it. And he turns around and he heads right for me. And I don't know whether to jump out of the way or try to shoot again or put him in a chokehold or what. But anyways, he turns and he splits off from me and he goes down, I don't know, maybe 10 yards away from me. And I just hit my knees. I'm like, oh, thank you. That was a miracle. And the reason why I say that is because deer like that, a buck like that, doesn't just high five you as you're coming over a hill, as you're walking by. They get that big, they get that size for a reason. It's because they're smart. They have senses that I can't even think about having when it comes to being out there in the woods. And I know he would have had to have smelled me. He would have had to have seen me. I mean, I saw him. I know he could have saw me. So what happened? How come I got to shoot him, and how come he didn't see me when we were about 15 yards apart, open hill, a few small trees in between me and him, nothing big. Well, this time of year, this thing called the rut kicks in. For those of you that don't know, it's when the bucks try to chase the does. The does are, ready to mate, and they try to reproduce. Well, during this time, specifically the bucks, they go nuts. Alright, they're crazy. And all they have is one thing on their mind, and it's those white-tailed does. Alright, I understand that. So, this is what he was thinking about. This is what was on this buck's mind. He had one thing on his mind, and it was not me. It was not my gun, and it was not that bullet that was flying right at him. That was the last thing on his mind, I guarantee you that. But see, that's what happens to those big, mature, aggressive bucks that have lasted so many years because of their wit and their skill and their stealth and their smartness. They can avoid hunters like me that are just walking over a hill, because it's time to go home. They can avoid people like me until the rut hits. And then they're cuckoo and they're doe crazy. And that's all they have on their mind. And that's when guys like me can luck out and tag a nice trophy. So let's think about this on a spiritual sense. And first thing I thought of was how so many times young men and older men, strong in the Lord, strong of faith, can be misguided and misled so easily and taken off the right path and at the drop of a hat due to a pretty young lady. I know what some of you may be thinking, alright, he's about to get onto these girls for straying those men away, but no, it's not the girl's fault. It's not the girl's fault, it's the guy's fault. I'll tell you that. And but so many times I think about David and Bathsheba. If you go back and read the story, for the time and the culture and everything back then, and all the men were off at war. You know, Bathsheba, she really wasn't doing anything wrong. She was bathing, sure. You know, she wasn't really doing anything wrong. David, on the other hand, all his men were out in the field. They were out fighting. They were sleeping in tents. Men were dying left and right. But he was at the palace hanging out and taking a stroll on the roof of his palace, probably to admire his kingdom or whatever the case may be. And he sees this lady over here bathing. And, you know, that right there, that's not the sin. He saw her. That's not the sin. But he lusted after her. He lusted after Bathsheba. He watched her. He stared at her. He wanted her. He wanted her for his own. You know, and him dwelling on that, him being led astray by his own lust, his own sin, his own selfish desire for this flesh that he sees, took him off of his spiritual and onto his fleshly. You know, and that's what happens when guys get alone, when guys aren't where they're supposed to be, when they're chasing women when they should be chasing after God. That's what happens. You see, all the men were out in the field, and at the beginning of the chapter it says that you know, this was the time of season when all the kings were with their men and at war. Well, how come David wasn't out there? You know, he was at the wrong place at the wrong time. And if he had been at the right place, you know, that whole Bathsheba thing may not have ever happened. It's just a thought. So guys, remember, be at the right places and at the right times. Don't go chasing the women, alright? And, you know, there's nothing wrong with desiring a woman in a biblical sense. Courting after her, you know, treating her with respect. But you see, we get into trouble when we don't use our minds, when we don't use our heads to think, and when we don't use our hearts. Chase after God. We'll end up like that nice buck that I killed. You know, you'll be you'll be on a wall somewhere, basically, is what I'm saying. And there's nothing wrong with loving a woman. There's nothing wrong with being with a woman. You know, after think about when God was creating everything, and he'd always create something and say it is good, and you know, God made this and it was good, and that and it was good. We made man. Something's not right here. And he said it's not good for man to be alone. Right? You remember that? He said it's not good for man to be alone. That's why he made woman. So, you know, that buck, he was following his natural instincts, just like we have natural instincts. But if you read the Bible long enough, and you read the New Testament and a lot of Paul's writings, you'll learn that the natural isn't what we strive for, and the natural isn't what we pursue. It is the spiritual and the eternal. And that's what leads to life. When you're pursuing the natural, that's when you get in trouble, and that's what leads to death. So anyways, that was the inspiration that I got from this blessing that I had to be able to tag this nice buck a couple weeks ago. And I was just wanting to pass that on to you guys, so dwell on that for a little bit.